Okay, picture this. You're standing on top of a stone wall that stretches farther than the distance between New York and Los Angeles. Now imagine that same wall just continuing for thousands of more miles. It carves its way across rugged mountains, dense forests, scorching deserts, and windswept plains. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unraveling one of the absolute greatest engineering achievements in human history, the Great Wall of China.
So let's just dive right into the staggering reality of its scale. We are talking 21,000 kilometers. For centuries, people have called it the longest wall ever built. And you know what? They're absolutely right. But let's quickly clear something up right off the bat. Despite that super famous legend, astronauts have actually confirmed you cannot see it from space with the naked eye under normal conditions. No way. But as we're going to see, the reality of this structure winding through some of Earth's absolute harshest landscapes, that's far more impressive than any myth from space.
So the really crucial question we need to ask today is simply why? Why would an empire devote generations of backbreaking labor, unimaginable wealth, and literally countless human lives to build something so utterly enormous? Was it really just a giant keep-out sign for enemies? Or is there a much deeper, maybe darker story hidden behind every single stone?
Let's get into Section 1, the myth and the reality.
And move into Section 2, Blood, Earth, and Unification.
To really understand how this whole thing builds up, we got to travel back over 2,700 years. Back then, there was no unified China. Instead, the land was kind of fractured into dozens of powerful, really ambitious kingdoms during what we call the Warring States era. And yeah, it was one of the bloodiest chapters in ancient Chinese history. While these rival kingdoms were just busy fighting each other, a terrifying threat waited up on the northern frontier. Highly skilled nomadic horsemen. Their main advantage? Blazing speed. They would strike farming communities and just vanish back into the steppe like ghosts. So, to defend against this lightning-fast cavalry, early rulers didn't build massive stone fortresses. They couldn't. They just desperately threw up these scattered, disjointed dirt barriers made of packed earth, timber, and gravel. Every kingdom was just trying to protect its own turf.
But then, history shifted entirely. In 221 BC, the impossible actually happened. A wildly ambitious young king from the state of Qin, who had just unmatched determination and some seriously advanced armies, conquered all those rival kingdoms. For the very first time in history, China was united under a single emperor, Qin Shi Huang.
Now, even with a unified empire, that northern frontier was still dangerously exposed to those nomadic raids. So Emperor Qin comes up with this breathtaking solution. Instead of tearing down the old borders, he introduces a totally radical vision. He orders his generals to connect all those scattered dirt walls, strengthen the weak sections, and expand them across completely unforgiving terrain. The dream of the Great Wall as one continuous barrier had officially begun. And just imagine the sheer physical nightmare of this vision, right? Ordering men to drag massive loads of gravel and timber up mountainsides that are nearly vertical, battling the elements every single step of the way.
Which brings us to Section 3, the longest cemetery on Earth.
Look, an engineering challenge of this magnitude in the ancient world required something truly devastating. Building this wall demanded a workforce of hundreds of thousands of people. And this wasn't just a military operation. We're talking about a massive mix of professional soldiers, ordinary farmers, craftsmen, and it was heavily supplemented by prisoners and convicts forced into labor. These people were pulled from their homes, marched into freezing northern mountains and scorching deserts, and forced to work under a relentless, totally brutal pace.
And the toll, it was horrific. Disease, exhaustion, and accidents from moving these massive stones claimed incredibly high numbers of lives. Now, you might have heard that ancient legend that laborers were buried inside the wall itself. Well, actually, modern archaeologists haven't found much evidence for that dramatic claim. The dead were most likely buried nearby, not inside the structure. But the sheer volume of lost lives, which is estimated in the hundreds of thousands, led many to refer to the Great Wall by a really heavy title, the longest cemetery on Earth.
Let's jump to Section 4, the Ming Dynasty's masterpiece.
So, centuries pass, dynasties rise and fall, and those original packed earth walls, they slowly crumble under wind and rain. But in the 14th century, after driving out the Mongol rulers, a new powerhouse emerges on the scene, the Ming Dynasty. And they were determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past, so they decided to upgrade the whole shebang. Out went the hardened dirt and gravel, and in came fired bricks and beautifully cut stone blocks. We're talking walls built up to 30 feet high, wide enough for horses to travel side by side on top. And get this, they even used a secret weapon to hold it all together, mortar made from sticky rice soup. Yeah, seriously. This ancient chemistry trick was so incredibly strong that weeds still can't grow through those bricks today. This is the magnificent, continuous stone masterpiece that millions of tourists actually walk on right now.
But it wasn't just a physical barrier, you know? It was actually a high-tech communication network for its time. If an enemy was spotted, soldiers didn't have to just send a runner on horseback. No way. They used thick columns of smoke during the day and blazing fires at night. A warning message could travel across hundreds of miles of mountain peaks in just a matter of hours. This allowed commanders to prep their defenses long before the enemy ever arrived. I mean, it was absolutely revolutionary.
Moving on to Section 5, Betrayal and Imperial Decay.
With massive stone walls, watchtowers, and instant communication, the whole thing sounds completely invincible, right? Well, history teaches us a pretty harsh lesson here. No wall is truly impenetrable. The nomadic tribes adapted. Instead of ramming their heads against the strongest stone forts, they just looked for the cracks. They found poorly guarded mountain passes. They attacked isolated, understaffed towers. But the most effective method? Bribery. If a main gate commander could be bought with gold, food, or promises of safety, an entire invading army could just walk right through the front door, without breaking a single brick. Ultimately, the wall hadn't failed. The people had.
This fatal human flaw really came to a head in the year 1644. China was facing one of its greatest political crises, and the Ming Dynasty was fracturing from within.
And in a moment of sheer dramatic irony, the absolute greatest defensive structure ever built by human hands wasn't destroyed by catapults or siege towers or overwhelming force. It was defeated by a single decision. A Ming general, basically choosing politics over protection, deliberately opened one of the wall's most heavily fortified gates to the invading Manchu army. The Ming Dynasty collapsed, and the Qing Dynasty was born.
Now for our final section, Section 6, a monument to human perseverance.
Under the new king rulers, who actually controlled both sides of the frontier, the wall kind of lost its military purpose entirely. The fortresses were abandoned, and nature slowly began to reclaim the stone. It really has been an epic journey, hasn't it? From Emperor Qin's brutal unification in 221 BC, to the Ming Dynasty's incredible stone rebuild, to its ultimate military failure in 1644. For centuries, it just sat decaying, transforming from a military shield into a monument to human perseverance. Local villagers even dismantled parts of it to build their homes. But in the modern era, the world recognized its immense historical value, which culminated in 1987 when it became a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
And today, we don't just rely on ancient text to understand it. Modern tools, things like satellite imagery and drones, have completely surveyed the terrain. And they prove that this vast network of walls, trenches, and natural barriers actually stretches over 21,000 kilometers. It's a staggering piece of shared human heritage, and honestly, the facts modern science has revealed are vastly more impressive than the myths.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to chew on. Empires rise and fall. Walls are built